On February 9th of 2004, 21-year-old UMass student Maura Murray drove from her dorm in Amherst, Massachusetts to the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
At approximately 7:27 p.m., Maura spun out her 1996 Saturn on a hairpin turn on Route 112 in North Haverhill. There has never been a credible sighting of Maura since.
Maura is 5 foot 7 inches tall. She weighs 120 pounds, and she has brown hair and hazel eyes.
If you have any information regarding Maura's disappearance, please submit it to us, the Murray family through their Facebook page, or the New Hampshire State Police Cold Case Unit.
This is Missing Maura Murray. Welcome back to the Missing Maura Murray podcast. I'm Tim, here today with Lance in the Crawlspace Studios in Wormtown. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, Tim. I'm feeling really good because we have my personal hero on the show today, and that's exciting.
That's right. It's Sarah Turney. Of course, Sarah Turney's sister, Alyssa Turney, went missing from Phoenix, Arizona in 2001. Her father, Michael Turney, is heavily suspected. I mean, that's about as nice as I can put it, without just saying it. It's really obvious what happened in the case. And Sarah, who has become our friend from meeting her at some conferences and things like that over the past year or two, she fights for her sister's disappearance like I've never seen.
Yeah, she is the biggest advocate out there for not only her sister, but as we find out during this interview, she is also using that power, that influence to help other people in similar situations, which is about the most productive thing you can do given the circumstances.
And Sarah has started her own podcast as well as her own blog. Check out justiceforalyssa.com. And please follow her in the show notes on social media. That's down there in the links. But check out her podcast, too, Voices for Justice. She is doing her own deep dive on her sister's disappearance as her sister. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable.
And it does come at a cost for her. Her relationship with her family is suffering because of what she's doing for Alyssa, but she feels so strongly about that, and she feels so strongly about her father, which is remarkable that she has come to terms with this, is the most likely culprit here, and that has put a strain on everything in her life, but she keeps doing it. And make sure you go ahead and order one of those T-shirts, because they have a great feel to them, and it's for a good cause. Justice for Alyssa t-shirt.
Yeah, so check that out. Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the chat with Sarah Turney. Make sure to check out her podcast and follow her on social media. Thanks a lot for listening. Welcome to the Missing Maura Murray podcast. Sarah Turney. Sarah, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. We know how busy you are. Can you give us a little bit of a background as to what's been going on lately?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Right now, the biggest focus, of course, is my new podcast about Alyssa, Voices for Justice. And it's a lot of research and re-listening to my interviews and, of course, editing them and learning how to podcast, which is also, a nice journey to go along the way. But it's a lot right now. I mean, I'm so deep in the story like I've never been before, and I'm learning new stuff all the time. So I feel like I'm in a completely different place than even a year ago.
Yeah, and I guess I might have jumped ahead a little bit too much right out of the gate, but I got excited, as I tend to do. I'm sure a lot of the listeners know who your sister is, but can you do an update on the case and your father and just a little bit of background on that for anyone who doesn't know? For anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, my sister is Alyssa Turney. She went missing when she was 17 in May of 2001 from Phoenix, Arizona. And it's a very long, complicated story, as you guys know. But essentially, after a very long time, the police decided that our father was the only person of interest in her case. And they told me that unfortunately they will not prosecute without a body. They recommended for me to get media exposure. So that's really where I'm at. We kind of know who did it, according to the police and my personal beliefs. And now I'm just trying to get her some justice.
Well, the podcast is amazing, Sarah, and I'm blown away listening to it. You've done a narrative, objective look at this. It seems it's almost startling when you say something that puts you, the host, into the story. It's almost like I remember. Oh yeah, I forgot that this is actually Sarah, the host's sister that she's talking about.
Yeah.
It's actually that good. Like like the podcast is that good journalistically that it works without even if you weren't her sister.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is such an amazing compliment. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to make it as objective as possible. But of course, yeah, I'm a part of the story and there are things that I remember and I try to put that in there as well. But really the bulk of the information is coming from, this huge stack I have of like 3,000 documents in addition to interviewing people I haven't talked to since I was a kid. So I'm fortunate to have this wealth of information, in addition to hundreds of hours of, home videos. There's just so much information that hasn't been released that I'm blessed.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, there's things I remember and I try to insert.
So you've got these documents, these home videos. Where did these materials come from?
Yeah, so I mean, they're just literally my home videos from growing up. So the police at one point did have all of these materials and they released them to me. So I'm just trying to get through them, but there's so many. I honestly haven't counted how many, but I'm almost through up until when Alyssa disappeared. So I'm getting there.
And but you also have like transcripts of phone calls. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so that actually all comes from the police. This is public record. It's insane how much they have. Everything I'm presenting on the podcast, the police know about.
And you just said that they won't prosecute without a body. Is that something that is absolutely written in stone? And is that your goal with the podcast, to get your father, Michael, to disclose where he put the body?
So no, I don't think that's set in stone at all. I mean,
Okay.
In comparison to other no body cases tried in Arizona, we have more evidence than some of them. So I don't think that's set in stone at all. And that's what I'm working towards. It's not necessarily to get my father to confess or tell us where the body is, because honestly, I don't think he ever will. He's just not. I don't think he's that type of person to give us that type of peace. But the goal is definitely for the state to take this case, to look at it and see what the police saw, 5 years ago, to see what the whole world sees and just give us a fair shot at a trial. But yeah, I absolutely hope that that's what it goes towards.
But do you think that your father is the type of person who likes knowing that another party knows that he's getting away with something?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I spoke with him, he taunts me. I haven't released this call yet. It's never been released. But, when it comes to the time, because the podcast is in chronological order. So when we get to 2017, I'm releasing the call and he absolutely taunts me. He says, be there at the deathbed and I'll give you all the honest answers you want to hear. And then he tells me that he'll confess to everything if the state agrees to give him lethal injection within 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does he get to that point? That would mean that he would have to turn himself in, right? Or he would have to be arrested with evidence that supports a case against him.
Yeah, that's so funny, Lance. Like you're thinking just like me, but that, yes,
oh,
like
stop
when
it!
he said that,
don't put me up there.
well, when he said, when he offered to confess within 10 days of lethal injection or whatever, I said, okay, great. Like, how do we make this happen? And he gets like upset. Of course, he's like, really, and I'm like, absolutely. Like, can we go down right now? I don't think I was that cool of saying it, but yeah, I mean, we need a confession, or we need this case to be presented for prosecution and accepted. That's really where it's at. The whole plan was to present it years ago. So why it's not already in trial, in prosecution, is beyond me. I don't know.
not to get too hung up on this, but knowing what we know of your father through all of the media outlets that you've utilized, how I mean, he should know, the legal system, he should know that that is so obviously a taunt to you, because the only reason he would be in the position where legally he would be given the option to have a lethal injection is if he confessed. So what is he possibly confessing? Like, I guess I'm nitpicking and splitting hairs on the taunt. Like, I'll confess everything if they agree to give me lethal injection. Well, they're not going to agree to give you lethal injection before you confess anything. It's just obviously a taunt. I don't know. It just frustrates me that's what you deal with.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, he sets it up for failure. It's the same thing he did with his official interview with the police. He says, yeah, I'll come in and give an official interview, but we're going to do it live on TV, on CNN, with Canadian operators. I'm going to polygraph my whole family. I'm going to polygraph the judge in the case for my bombs. I'm going to polygraph John Walsh from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Like, it's just insane.
Let's take this further back, Sarah, and explain how your sister went missing and how you find yourself in the situation you're in now. So you are half sisters with Alyssa, and you guys share a mom. And so please stop me if I'm incorrect or inaccurate or anything. But so you were sort of the Brady Bunch there for a little while, right? Living together in the early 90s?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's what episode 2 of the podcast is titled, is The Brady Bunch. We were. I mean, it seemed so promising. My father had 3 boys and married my mother, who had Alyssa, and our brother John, and then they had me together. So I think, the idea, hopefully, of the family was never for it to end up this way. But at one point, it looked really promising for our family, and it was really sad to go through that story and kind of tell the demise of my own family.
Yeah, I bet. It's obviously incredibly personal to you. But your mom ended up passing away in 1993, I believe, of cancer.
Yeah. And, of course, there's suspicions around that now. While researching everything, I found out that my father never quit his job 3 weeks before our mother died, like he had said. Or he was never fired, I'm sorry. He always said that he was fired 3 weeks before our mother died. But in fact, he quit and knowingly gave up the health insurance and the life insurance at the end of the month. But conveniently, our mother died the exact day that her life insurance policy was due to lapse.
So what would have been the consequences if your mom had died the next day?
Yeah, if she died the next day, my father would not have gotten the life insurance settlement, which I don't know how much it was, but enough to take 7 kids to Disneyland and buy a new vehicle, and enough to live without a job for quite some time.
So is it, in your opinion, is there evidence that suggests that he might have accelerated your mom's death?
Yes. I mean, it's hard to say because it's all family members telling me what happened while my mother was dying. And although it's confirmed from different sources, it's hard to prove because my mother didn't have an autopsy done, which is also extremely strange just given my father and the fact that he had planned to sue the tobacco company. So he gets no autopsy done. We have no hardcore evidence. But according to my aunts, my father was underdosing and overdosing my mother with morphine, so that it would seem like she was possibly in more pain than she was, so that he could give her more morphine. And the day that she died, my aunt and my grandmother stepped out for a cigarette, and they came back in, and my mother was begging them to call 911. My father had just given her morphine. And yeah, I mean, she didn't go peacefully. She was begging the whole way, wanting people to call 911 to save her. So I think it's extremely suspicious.
At what point did the hospital approve of your father administering morphine to your mother?
That's a great question. I think it was just a few weeks prior to that. I mean, it got to the point where they were absolutely certain that she was not going to beat the cancer. She was definitely passing away. And they sent her home and gave him liquid morphine to administer. It wasn't an IV drip. It was nothing I think that would require a nurse. But I imagine right from the point she got home.
I find it pretty remarkable that a hospital can simply give someone a drug to administer that has been known to accelerate. And I mean, that's what they give patients in order to accelerate the death process.
Oh, see, and I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be, but that's a great point.
Yeah, so someone trusted him to not use that.
I'm just wondering how that conversation went down. Were they like, here you go, Mr. Turney. If her pain gets too bad, give her a couple of drops of morphine? Or was he approaching them and saying, I don't know what to do if her pain gets so bad. Maybe I should be giving her morphine. It'd be interesting to find out how that conversation went down.
So there was no hospice nurse doing that?
No.
Right.
No,
Wow.
There was no hospice nurse. It's my understanding that they were on some type of schedule because my aunt alluded to the fact that my father was breaking from the directions on the bottle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that must have taken quite a toll on your family and you, the death of your mother.
Yeah. I always thought that was the big moment where our father broke. And that's what every family member would tell you. But I think it's a combination of things. But yeah, absolutely. It changed our family forever. There was no one to watch Alyssa and my brother John anymore. Unfortunately, we were all left in the hands of our father, which changed our lives forever.
What was the funeral like for your mother? Did a lot of people show up? And what was your father like with those relatives and friends?
Sure. So yeah, of course, it's always strange, right? In this story. So while my mother was dying, there's a lot of reports of him spending a ton of money. And when people would ask him where he's getting this money, you just quit your job or got fired or whatever he was telling people at that time. He said, oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to get this life insurance policy. So despite him spending so much money, when the funeral came around, he told my mother's family that he didn't have any money for a funeral or to bury the body. So there was a small ceremony held. We were living in California at the time. And there was just a tiny ceremony. And from what I can see from pictures and videos, no, it was just intimate family. And then my mother's family took our mother's body to Kansas. And Alyssa and I never saw her burial site. I've never seen it to this day.
Oh, wow.
You've never seen your mother's burial site in Kansas?
No. Our father never took us. And it's definitely something I want to do as an adult. But yeah. I always thought that was kind of strange that we never took that trip.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but in listening to your podcast, it sounded like your father, Michael, may have sexually abused some of your aunts?
Yeah. So while our mother was dying, like I said, my mother's sister and mother came out to take care of her. And during that time, my aunt reports that our father raped her.
How old was your aunt?
Oh, goodness. She was younger than my mom, so I would have to say maybe 30. So, over 18.
Wow. And so how many of your aunts is that suspected with?
So, yeah, there's, I'm trying to think of aunts specifically, but, a few. It was in the past when he was with his first wife, he sexually assaulted her younger sister. He handcuffed her to a bed and assaulted her and claimed to be sleepwalking. And then he had a sexual relationship with his brother's wife, but I believe that was consensual.
So among the many issues of your father, he is probably he's most likely a sexual predator as well.
Yeah, he displays a very clear pattern of behavior of assaulting women, particularly young women and women in the family.
And do you know what age do you believe sexual abuse of Alyssa began?
Yeah, so before my mother was diagnosed with cancer, she actually took Alyssa and me to be checked for sexual abuse, and they found scarring in Alyssa's vagina. So we think as early as 4, maybe 3.5. It was very, very soon after they all moved in together.
And this is something that you never experienced with your father. That's correct?
Correct. If I did, I have no memories of it. I get approached all the time about hypnotic therapy, which I would definitely love to explore. But yeah, as far as I can recall, absolutely not. But Alyssa and I also had exposure to some really heavy prescription medicines,
Okay. Talk about that. What kind of prescription medicines did you have exposure to at a young age, and who exposed them to you? I think I know the answer, but where did that come from?
Yeah, sorry. And I know we keep jumping into rabbit holes. It just always seems to happen with this story. But But yeah, growing up, our father always gave us triazolam, diazepam, and other things I really just identified by color. But he would give it to us for like when we couldn't sleep, when we were upset. We could just go in there and ask him for it, or sometimes he would offer it. So it makes me wonder if it was, at times being put in our food or what, because I mean, trauma can affect your memory, but I have so few memories that it makes me wonder, like, what else could have happened.
Does that concern you that you had these these drugs that were being administered to you that affected your memory? Does it concern you if ever there was a time where you had to go on trial to testify that you wouldn't properly recollect something and that would be used against you?
I mean, it's
and I
possible,
apologize if I just put that in someone's head right now.
Thanks a lot, Lance. But the thing is, like, I don't recall anything that could be used in court anyway, let alone something that could have been like construed in a different way. Like, so the police have actually brought this up, right? Like, they've encouraged media exposure, and then they said I was getting too much, and saying that it could jeopardize me being a witness. And what I responded with was like, well, that's okay, because every other witness you have is better than me, because I remember nothing, which is what I said when my father first got arrested. And it's what I say today because it's true.
Okay, but the behaviors of your father should, and the evidence that he left behind, whether it's circumstantial or not, the videos and transcripts and all of that sort of should speak volumes beyond what you may or may not have remembered as a under the influence child, I would hope.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, don't take my testimony as a 10, 11, 12-year-old or whatever. Like, take these thousands of hours of audio and phone transcripts. That's where your information is.
And at one point in the podcast, you mentioned that Michael, your dad, had checked himself into a mental hospital for a couple of months.
Yeah. So that's what I was told. This was before my mother was diagnosed with cancer, but apparently it was just becoming too much for him. And he absolutely just left her with all the kids for a few months to go to this mental rehabilitation facility. I have not been able to find any information on it, which is fair. I mean, it's literally medical records, so it's very hard to access that, which I honestly respect. As much as I would love to learn more, I don't think I'll be ever able to access those types of records.
You had mentioned earlier something about the bombs, and I just want to remind the audience what you're talking about when you said when you're talking about bombs in relation to your father.
Well, at a certain point in time, the police actually start looking into Alyssa's case a few years after she goes missing. And after some events that happen, they really narrow their focus on our father. Again, the only person of interest in this case. And at this point, I am the family contact person. So they call me and they say, Sarah, we've got some news about Alyssa. Can you come down to the station? I say, absolutely. I'll be down there. So I hate this story so much. So I go down there and they sit me down and they say, we don't have any news about your sister, but your father has been sexually abusing her whole life. We think that he killed her. You have another sister you don't know about. What do you think about your father now? I am my father's child. I know my rights. I say, am I free to go? They let me go. I go back to the house. I gather some things, and then the neighborhood's cordoned off. And I go to my brother's house, and I watch the news, and I find out that they found the biggest pipe bomb and gun bust in Phoenix history. 26 pipe bombs and a whole lot of illegal guns.
Okay, and that's all linked back to your father.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. They were my father's guns and bombs, and they also found a manifesto of how he wanted to use those bombs. He was going to blow up the local union building, an electrical union that he used to be a part of.
He was employed at the electrical union, had a grievance against them, wrote a manifesto, which I can count probably on one hand the manifestos I've ever heard of, and zero of them are ever geared towards a motivational, like, positive movement. So I'm assuming this manifesto had some negative tones to it. And then his plan was to shoot up the building, blow up the building, do both, get arrested, or was it a suicide mission?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of different theories here, but what I feel is that, he planned basically to drive a van into like the front doors. He had a brick next to the gas pedal, so he was going to set that up to to drive through the doors and then supposedly shoot the back that was filled with propane tanks. And then I believe somewhere in there were the bombs. But he was also found with another identification and another social security card and disguises. So although his manifesto said that he was seeking revenge, that he was going to commit suicide in order to get media coverage for Alyssa, I fully believe that he was planning on running away. And you're probably wondering, right, like, what is he getting revenge for Alyssa on? Well, he believes that, or at one point believed that the Union killed Alyssa, that 2 assassins were sent to kill her. And in turn, my father says that he had to kill those assassins.
From the Union Assassins Department.
Yeah, it's a...
Every union's got an assassin department.
I feel uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah. No, and it reads like some terrible Bruce Willis movie, where he's like, tell me where she is, tell me what happened, and they just give all the information, and then he just has no choice but to kill them. And I asked him in 2017 about that, and he says, what assassins, what story? Basically, he doesn't tell that story anymore because he knows how ridiculous it is.
But the claim is that he killed 2 people.
Correct.
Who had killed Alyssa?
Yeah, and I'm going to go into it on the podcast, but I found out all about the death of those 2 people, and my father absolutely, in fact, did not kill them.
Oh, big surprise there.
Yeah, I know, right? Big shock, big revelation.
Yeah. Now, tell me about your cousin David, who I believe is Michael's nephew, and there was an account of a videotape that existed of Michael and Alyssa. And I think maybe even another person or 2. The last time I had heard about that, it wasn't from like the horse's mouth. It wasn't from David. So now hearing that there's an actual person behind who saw that, who remembers seeing that, what is that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. And to be honest, when I first spoke with David, and setting up that call, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure why he'd said the story. I hadn't heard it from him before. I didn't know what to think, and I was really skeptical. And then when I spoke with him, the remorse he felt was so real. But he was living with us. It was 1999, and he lived with us for maybe under a year. And he got home from work late one night. He got Filiberto's burrito, came home, popped in Dr. Dolittle into the VCR. My father was notorious for recording things off of TV. So we had a ton of VHS tapes with, handwritten labels. So he thinks he's watching Dr. Dolittle, and he finds a nude video of Alyssa and another potentially underage girl. She was nude from the waist up, just kind of laying on the couch with a newspaper over her face.
Wow.
Okay.
So what did he do with that tape? He didn't take the tape or anything, obviously?
So, no, and that's obviously one of his biggest regrets, he says. He left the tape in the VCR, and he immediately left our home. He didn't grab much of his stuff. He had to come back for it later, but he immediately left and started living somewhere else. And he says when he came back, my father, couldn't look him in the eye, and they didn't really exchange words at all. And what I found out while researching for this podcast is that it's believed that there was another tape that existed. I spoke with my Uncle James, who is a big part of this story as well. And he told me, when I told him I spoke with David, he said, well, what about the other tape? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, no, there's another tape that was supposedly found of Alyssa being sexually abused by your father and an adult female.
Wow. Any idea who that adult female would be?
Yeah. Sorry. It takes a little bit to wrap one's head around this.
Yeah. Sorry. I know I say it really casually. But no, we don't. And I'm thinking of the timeline. No, because my father stopped dating after my father had one girlfriend. After our mother died, and Alyssa told that girlfriend she was having sex with her father, and he never brought another female around the house. So I have no idea who that other woman would be.
And is this a product of hidden cameras, or did it appear that they knew they were being filmed, or was it just a static shot that could be a hidden camera?
So I asked that question. It definitely was not behind a vent, but we don't know. He says that it was, he believes it was on a tripod because it was so still. But he couldn't tell if it was hidden. He didn't think so.
Yeah, and you ask about hidden cameras in vents, and because that was a very common thing that he did.
Yeah, so that's what I found out. A few years ago, I just thought it was the one hidden camera in the living room facing the couch. The shots are on 2020; it's kind of everywhere. But no, I started asking people, and they were like, no, like there was cameras in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in her bedroom. There was recording devices in her bedroom, like apparently just everywhere. And I had no idea, which I say that on the podcast. I'm like, apparently I was the only one who didn't know. But I was just so oblivious.
Well, you were super young too, and how would you even know about something that was never brought to your attention back then? Like you probably wouldn't assume that this was happening if no one brought it up, right?
Yeah. I mean, why would I even think about it at that point?
Yeah.
Like, I was doing my best to literally, ignore my family like every other kid.
You know what it feels like to me is that because I know in the podcast you said that Alyssa spoke to a lot of people about it, and you were maybe the only one who didn't know. She never confided in you about it. Maybe she was hopeful that your dad would change, which, I mean, I think it was some kind of protective nature that took over.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it was a mix of all sorts of feelings, Maybe he'll change. Maybe she knew that he wasn't doing it to me.
Yeah.
And maybe she just didn't want me to know and crush my dreams of my dad. Like, she knew.
Right.
She knew how close me and my father were. Like, he was my best friend. I didn't go to school 3 days a week. So I literally hung out with him all day, every day, because he didn't work either.
I'm sure some people are listening and they're thinking, why isn't he in jail right now simply for the pipe bombs and the manifesto murder plot? How long did he spend in jail for that? And how did he get out? Did he get out on good behavior, or did he just serve his term?
Yeah, so he got the maximum sentence of 10 years. I believe he served 8 or 9. He didn't serve the full sentence, but a lot of it. And I think he did get out on good behavior. But yeah, I mean, he is a free man as of 2 years ago.
One thing that you had said to us previously was that, and it reminded me right now when you said that you and your father were buddies. He would make his I guess his obsession over Alyssa into a game with you, and that was something that really stood out to me. Can you talk about like how that was presented to you, his possessiveness and the spying?
Yeah. I mean, so the way it was presented to me was like, I thought Alyssa was this really bad kid. I think she came home drunk once. But she did the whole, come here, I need to tell you something, don't ever drink. And like, so it freaked me out, even though it's nothing now. Like every teenager drinks. Don't do it. I don't recommend it, but I believe that it pretty much happens everywhere. But I was led to believe that she was absolutely out of control. So between seeing her drunk and knowing that he found weed in her room once, I was like, wow, this is pretty accurate, right? Like as a kid, I'm like, that's pretty bad. Like I see this all the time on Saved by the Bell, like no drinking, like this is a bad kid right here. And so when I would want to do things, like I would go to my dad and say, like, I'm so sad Alyssa won't let me in her room. She's in there with whatever friend I want to see. I remember he turned to me and he goes, oh, I got this new toy. It's called a bionic ear, which is like I guess kind of like a microphone, you could say. So I could put it underneath Alyssa's door with a headset and listen to what they were saying. So that was one thing. And then eventually he did tell me about the camera in the living room vent. He showed me a video of Alyssa making out with a boy, again, saying like, look what she does when we're not watching. So yeah, I mean, I think he absolutely included me on some of that.
What do you think that did for him to show you that and tell you those things?
I mean, in his mind, I think it probably made him feel like it was more justified. Like, it's not a secret. He's telling people, I'm actively a part of it. I know it's a family thing. We're all looking out for Alyssa, which is absolutely not the case.
Are your siblings more open now? I was listening on the way in, and you're reading a phone call between your father and your brother. And have you been talking to your brothers about this?
No. So I'm like still so nervous to hear the feedback from that. So That particular brother that I speak about in that transcript, no, I don't speak with him. I do speak to others. One, Alyssa's biological brother, just started liking the Facebook page, and he like made a comment on something, and I literally burst into tears and text him and was like, thank you so much. Like, literally, I love you. Like, you know, don't feel the need to post or anything, but just know that this like warms my heart so much. And then another brother actually got involved in a police meeting. So I think that they're warming up to it. I still think that they don't like it. You know, of course, no one's first choice is to air your whole family's dirty laundry, but I feel like I don't have another choice. So I'm very fortunate in that I do feel like they are warming up to it. I hope that they want to participate in the future.
Well, we've said to you and between us, and I've said to other people, just how I can't really comprehend the determination and the courage it takes to do what you do, because you've essentially alienated yourself from your family. At least, you know, maybe things are starting to improve a little bit, but the risk you ran was saying, I'm going to have to be the voice for this on my own. And I mean, that's I don't know anybody who I don't know anybody who's done that.
Sarah, I am so sick of hearing Lance talk about this. He says this like every day in here.
I do. He's not kidding.
But it is true. I mean, it's incredible.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, Alyssa would do it for any one of us. She was a fighter. So, I mean, I see it as very black and white. Like, I don't have a choice. This is what I have to do to make, you know, to get justice for Alyssa.
Now, once you have achieved some, I guess, level of justice or level of satisfaction with what you're working on now with Alyssa, is this something that you plan to do with other missing people and maybe other cold cases to advocate for them, or maybe talk to family members of missing people, or, you know, suspected family members who have done something? Would you ever consider doing that? Do you do it now?
Yeah, so to a certain extent, I do kind of do it now, but yes, after I get the trial for Alyssa, I absolutely want to help other people. And what I want to focus on are active cases in which we can get justice, meaning something that hasn't been tried or possibly a wrongful conviction. I don't know what season 2 is going to look like just yet, but I am leaning towards another deep dive into a different case. Which case, I'm not sure just yet. But yeah, I mean, the plan is to keep going and keep helping people. And honestly, like specifically within the Phoenix Police Department, like I am going to laser focus on their cases like no other, because I feel like it's just absolutely insane the way that they operate, and I will not go away until there is major change within that department. But that's always been the plan, and I do want to roll it into, like, honestly, a nonprofit. I want to help people get the skills they need to fight cases like this on their own, which means social media skills, public speaking, you know, how do you get a private detective, how do you get a case review, how to actually speak to the police in an effective manner. I want to help people get these tools to help themselves.
Well, I'm sure you're not going to be getting out of any parking tickets in Phoenix anytime soon. How do they view you? Because you said you want to laser focus on them and their cases. Are they welcoming to you?
No, they hate me. They hate me. Like the way that they speak to me is insane. Like to the point where the family advocates are like, we've never heard an officer speak to a family member like that. Like, because they work for different departments, they can say things like this. But no, they hate me. And in fact, there's another case local to Arizona. I'm friends with the sister, and she's fighting for justice as well. And she brought up my name in one of her meetings, and they encouraged her not to listen to me. So it's working, and I'm not going away.
That's incredible. And what can people do if they want to get involved with Alyssa's case, or they want to help you with any nonprofit, or if they have a case of their own that they want to talk to you about? How do they get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website, voicesforjusticepodcast.com. If you want to submit a case or submit an email, try to reach out to me through email. Social is getting really clogged right now, but I'm absolutely open to hearing about your case and talking to you about it. And as far as helping, like, I've tried signatures, I've tried GoFundMe's, I'm still trying to get some billboards, but honestly, like, it's sharing Alyssa's story. I wish that there was some magic bullet to make this happen, but the slow build of this media pressure is working. So we just need to keep on keeping on with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. You mentioned signing petitions, and there's not this magic bullet that's going to make it all go away. And we find that in everything that we've done, there's a big misconception that a petition can go around and this superhero organization will swoop in and answer all the questions. But you nailed it. You're utilizing social media. You're utilizing however you can make your voice be heard, and it is gradual, and it is a grind, but that does work. We've seen that with a lot of the cases, even with Maura Murray's case. The buildup of all this media attention, and they went into a house and searched. It's not the only reason they did that, but it's one of the reasons they did that. And you have such an enormous following, you can have thousands and thousands of people, as the voice for your sister.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it takes. And I mean, yeah, the police don't look at those petitions and care too much, unfortunately. I mean, they literally told me, we don't care if you get 1 million signatures. Like, it's just the way that you think the justice system should work. It is not that way at all. But yeah, I think it just takes public pressure. Like you said, it worked in Maura Murray's case. I mean, look at Making a Murderer. It's just, unfortunately, like kind of the trend of justice right now.
Yeah.
And I just popped over to your Twitter page and noticed that you liked eating chips with lemon juice. That's odd. What is that all about?
Well, and the hot sauce, Lance. You cannot forget the hot sauce. That is like the biggest part.
I thought hot sauce was just separate. So you eat potato chips with lemon juice and hot sauce.
Yeah, like classic Lay's. You put a little bit of lemon juice on it, and then you put like Cholula on top, and it's the best snack ever. It's spicy and delicious and amazing.
Cholula is my favorite hot sauce. The little wood top. Yeah, the Chipotle one's great. But anywho, I fangirl over you, so that's what I'm doing now.
Well, thank you so much.
I fangirl over you. When we saw each other at CrimeCon, oh my goodness. It was like the best moment of my life.
Oh, stop. I'm blushing.
Oh, goodness. No offense, Tim. I also love you very much. I've seen you more, though, so I'm gunning to see Lance again.
Yes, but that means that we have a stronger relationship because we've seen each other more. So thank you very much.
I'm jealous.
Well, we're both wearing Justice for Alyssa shirts right now, so no favoritism there. And we will share a picture on social media. So if you're listening out there, pick up your Justice for Alyssa t-shirt or shirt and wear it proudly.
Oh, thank you guys. You guys are seriously the best and my heroes. And thank you. I can't even believe that I'm on Missing Maura Murray. It's literally the first podcast I ever listened to. Like, this is a dream come true, and I love you guys so much.
Full circle. Well, thank you. We love you too.